Pacers in front, and the Thunder even this series. We welcome you to the Volkswagen post-game show alongside Tim Legler. I'm Scott Van Pelt, and here, Tim, we take notes all game long, and this was one of those nights that for the balance of this evening, it felt like we were going to be talking about the home team ahead 3-1 in this series. They had a 10-point lead late in the third, but Oklahoma City managed to stay in the fight, and when push came to shove, sometimes literally late, they had more and won. How?
I can't really put into words how improbable it is that we're going to a Game 5 tied at 2 with the way that this game was controlled by Indiana for the most part. Look at Oklahoma City's numbers tonight. They had 10 assists as a team. They made 3 threes, including a huge one, I think the biggest shot of the game, by Shai Gilgeous-Alexander when he cut that lead from 4-1. Here's what happened at the end of this game. They showed up in a big way defensively. Chet Holmgren was sensational during a 3 or 4 possession stretch with his ability to use length to switch out and guard. So their defense showed up the way that we saw it basically all year, but had a very difficult time corralling Indiana all of Game 3, most of Game 4. When they needed it, they tightened up defensively, forced some really bad possessions out of Indiana, and then Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had enough juice in the tank to make big shots. Like, yes, he shuffled his feet on that baseline drive. They missed a travel on that, but there's a number of travels missed throughout the game. There's no question about it. But he had more balance, and he had more energy at the end of this game to close the deal.
And let's go back to why. Because early on, as we're sitting here watching, you're like, wow, they took the ball out of his hands after the defensive intensity and pressure we saw from the Pacers in Game 3. It's Williams handling the ball quite a bit, and that was interesting. And do you think that the fact that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander didn't have to handle the ball all night allowed him to have more gas in the tank in those critical final few minutes?
There is no question about it. He barely brought the ball up at all in the first quarter, and we were kind of sitting there watching it, and it looked strange. He spent a lot of possessions off the ball, would go to the corners, come off stagger screen to get it later in the possession, but definitely expended a lot less energy advancing the ball up the floor over the first 3.5 quarters. So he had more when he needed it late. You know, that 3 that he hit, you talk about a guy being tired at the end of a game on a night when they could not make a 3-point shot to keep them in it. He hits the big 3. He hits a mid-range. He gets to the line when he has to. He played like an MVP offensively down the stretch, and their defense gave them a chance. I did think Indiana played with some hesitation offensively. You know, you get that way sometimes when you feel a game slipping away a little bit. There was a little bit of hesitancy out of that team offensively, and OKC typically feasts off that if they see you back on your heels.
Siakam didn't touch the ball. It felt like forever in the late game scenario, and part of that is the defense of the Thunder, certainly, but you just have to wonder how he doesn't at least get a touch from a guy that's got a length advantage on a lot of people and has shown the capability to take and make big shots. That felt like a miss.
Definitely, and he has, again, for their team, I think Pascal Siakam has the most favorable matchups, most trips up the floor, because he gets smaller guys on him. He can shoot over the top, get something quality when he needs it. Again, it felt very perimeter-based those last 3 or 4 possessions for Indiana. They were trying to get switches and beat guys downhill, but Chet Holmgren was keeping guards in front and using that length to deter anything in the paint.
All right, you know the drill, right?
Yeah. You got somebody waiting. I got to get out of here.
It's ball brotherhood.
I'll hand it off to this guy.
Some context on the Thunder squaring this series. It's the 14th victory of this postseason, which breaks the tie with the 2012 Thunder team that featured the young trio of superstars, Durant, Westbrook, and Harden, all of whom would eventually go on to win MVPs in this league. And they come from behind to do it. Their 4th double-digit comeback of this playoffs. Look, they've won by a ton in many, but they've shown some grit, and they had to stay in the fight in this one. It's a double-digit deficit which is erased. It's their best record in a single season in the last quarter century. One was a 29-point comeback against Memphis. And the good news for Oklahoma City, in the last 15 seasons, there have been 5 teams to trail 2-1 in the finals and win Game 4. Each of those went on to win the title. Game 5, of course, on Monday. We'll be back in Oklahoma City. The Thunder are 9-2 there this postseason. Alex Caruso sits down. What's in the cup, my guy?
A little smoothie.
Is it?
Calories.
I can imagine after this.
Yeah, we need them.
I've been talking all series long to the gentleman I've spoken with about the card and what's written down, and I had fatigue on here. You all looked tired at times. This Pacer team, they say styles makes fight, and they make fights, and their style is unusual, it seems. What was the key for you all to sort of steady yourselves and stay in this fight and then ultimately win it on points in the end?
Yeah, I mean, especially at home for them, when the crowd gets going, they get energized and they go on little runs. So we just made sure to try to stay steady through the game. A lot of ups and downs. There were times where we played great and we'd make a little run, and then, you know, we'd have some lapses and they'd make a couple threes. And the whole time we were just talking about staying steady through the storm, you know, and just giving ourselves a shot. And you know, we were in a similar position against Denver in Game 4 on the road, so we had something to lean against, just, you know, past history of being there and doing it. So we felt confident going into the fourth, but obviously you got to go out there and do it.
Are there little mile markers in a comeback? It's 10 late in the third, and then you start chipping away. I mean, is there, in the timeouts, is it let's get it to 5 by a certain point? Is there any of that you're kind of giving yourselves little mile markers where if we can get to that, we're still good? Any of that?
I mean, not directly, but, like, you know, there was a couple times where we would get it within, you know, a couple possessions, or tied, and then they'd make a shot or two, and we'd call timeout, and you go to the bench, and it feels like, you know, the emotion of the game, and it feels like you're down 10, but you look up and it's a 3-point game. And
sure.
So just reminding ourselves where we are and staying present in the game and understanding that, like, this is still very attainable.
If I tell you before the game that Shea has 0 assists for the first time in 347 games.
Really?
And you all as a team make three pointers in the game. You're wondering, why am I talking to you on the set right now?
I'm probably not expecting to be up here.
Understood. So it's a long answer, I'm sure, layers, but how do you all manage to not steal this game, but win this game in the fourth quarter in this building, which is as good as yours at home?
Yeah, I mean, to start, just an unbelievable belief in this group. You know, like we really believe that we're going to get the job done night in, night out, no matter what the circumstances are. And then, you know, winning the margins, we got to the paint at a high rate. I think we did a pretty good job at creating turnovers, and then we got to the free throw line a good amount and made points there. So I don't even know what the offensive rebounds are, but Chet had a couple big ones in the start of the fourth to give us easy points.
Shea didn't handle the ball early. I was talking to Legs. Our theory is that, like, lessen some of the loads so that perhaps there's some energy late. We certainly saw it. He makes a huge three and then makes the shot that gives you the lead that you don't surrender. He's the MVP of the league. You know who he is.
Dude.
You expect, I assume, to see these moments, but when they haven't shown themselves and you're on the verge of falling down 3-1, where do you find the belief and the faith that we know it's going to happen?
I mean, you said it to start. He's the MVP. You know, like, I've seen it time and time again, night in, night out. He's done it against, you know, the face of adversity, on easy nights, on hard nights, back-to-backs, down in playoff series, up. Like, he does it at every moment. So for me to expect anything else would be, you know, kind of crazy. But he's just one of those guys that's just so competitive, and, you know, he doesn't show a ton of emotion on the court, but he is one of the most competitive guys in this league. Yeah,
I mean, unflappable, certainly. And it applies, frankly, I think, to your whole squad. You guys don't blink. And, frankly, the Pacers mostly don't either. That's what's made this such an incredible series. I'm interested in your perspective on what Chet Holmgren gave you late on the defensive end, when this game was still in that coin flip place where they've shown they can win them if it's still there to be won. Yeah. And Holmgren was rolled his ankle. He's down. He's not the biggest dude, as we know. What did he give you all late on the defensive end?
Yeah, I mean, it just, you know, I've talked about the belief in this team and the competitiveness of this team, and they were picking on him. Like, they were trying to put him in actions, and rightfully so. He gave up a couple layups early or late in the third, and credit to him, he got up there and got a stop and moved his feet, and you know, at 7 whatever feet tall, and like you said, you know, 200-something pounds soaking wet.
Ain't no way he's 200 pounds.
He's heavier than me, and I know that. I'm like 190. I'm assuming he's.
You're not 190 either.
Yeah. That's why I got the smoothie. Just a credit to his competitiveness, man. That dude wants to be great, you know, and he's a hard worker, and he holds himself to a high standard. So, yeah, I kind of expected him, like I said, to get a stop eventually.